If you're a Leaving Cert chemistry student, you're probably making sure that you're studying the ethene and the ethyne experiment for your question 2s of the Leaving Cert paper. Let's go through everything that you need to know about the ethene and the ethyne experiment in this video. Starting with the ethene experiment. Looking at the balance reaction, what's going on here? We're starting off with ethanol and we're doing a type of elimination reaction to make ethene gas. Applying some organic knowledge here, we're going from a saturated compound to an unsaturated compound. Saturated is anything that has just single bonds, and then unsaturated means it has either a double or a triple bond. Familiarise yourself with this label diagram. We're going to have a test tube that's horizontal. We're going to have glass wool that's soaked in ethanol. Halfway along your test tube, you're going to have the Al2O3, which is going to act as a catalyst for this reaction. We're going to gently heat where the catalyst is. Try not to directly heat underneath the ethanol because ethanol is quite flammable. In your inverted test tube here in your water bath, you're going to collect the ethene gas. It's going to displace the water out of the test tubes. We're going to collect a series of test tubes and then we're going to use them for testing later. We normally discard the first test tube or two because it's mainly just displaced air. Safety precautions are very common questions within these experiments. So apart from just not directly heating the ethanol, what's another safety precaution we might think about? Well, another thing we want to prevent is called suckback. To avoid suckback from happening, you're going to remove the delivery tube from the water before you remove the heat. Other safety precautions, because we're using glass wool, we must wear gloves. They could also ask you about the appearance of certain chemicals within these experiments. So your Al2O3, the catalyst, is a white solid. Ethanol is a colourless liquid. The test for properties, when we look at the flammability test and the test for unsaturation, is the exact same for what we're going to do for the ethene and the ethyne experiment. So let's first look at the ethyne experiment before we look at these shared property tests. So here's your fully labelled diagram of the experimental setup. There is an option to also include copper sulfate that we're going to bubble through the ethyne, and that's to remove impurities. Samples of impurities we could remove are phosphine and ammonia. In this reaction, we're going to react calcium carbide with water. Calcium carbide is a dark grey solid in appearance. When they react, they're going to make ethyne gas. Similar to the other experiment, we're also going to try collect the gas in an inverted test tube. We will try to collect a series of these test tubes and later use them for testing. And remember, just like the ethene experiment, the first test tube or two are normally discarded because they're mainly containing displaced air. Precautions for this experiment. Well, the calcium carbide can be quite corrosive, so we must handle them with care and wear gloves. The other issue is that ethyne can actually form an explosive mixture with air, so when we do our testing, our flammability test next, we must make sure that we do this well away from this apparatus. So once we've made our samples of ethene and ethyne, what next? Now we're going to do our test of certain properties. First going to do a test of the flammability, and then we're going to do a test for unsaturation. For the test of flammability, you're going to do the same thing to both samples. You're going to hold a lighted taper over the mouth of the test tube and you're going to note the flame. Ethyne can be described as a more luminous and sootier flame compared to ethene. Ethene is a less clean flame and it's also less luminous. And then our other property that we're going to test for is to test for unsaturation. What does unsaturation mean? Well, unsaturation means it's a compound that contains a double or triple bond. So looking at ethene and ethyne, both of them have at least a double or a triple bond, making them unsaturated. We could use acidified potassium permanganate or we could use bromine water. You need to be aware of the two of them. So your method is the same regardless of the reagent that you use. You're going to add a few drops of your reagent, give it a shake and note the colour change. For acidified potassium permanganate, if it's unsaturated, it should change from purple to colourless. If you've used bromine water, it should go from a red orangey shade to colourless. They can ask you to write the balanced equation of both experiments, and they could also ask you to write the balanced equation for the combustion reactions as well. Other possible short questions, they could ask you, what could we use ethene for? Ethene can be used to ripen bananas. And then ethyne gas can be used for cutting and welding of metals. If any questions about anything I've just mentioned in my video, I'm going to try answer as many people as I possibly can until 5 o'clock on Tuesday when you sit that chemistry exam.